You are listening to the e-flux podcast.
Hello, welcome back to the e-flux podcast. As we continue to record remotely, we wanted to look back in this episode on a project published in e-flux Conversations when coronavirus shutdowns spread around the world back in March. The initial idea was initiated by Hito Steyerl and developed by e-flux Conversations editor Mike Andrews. For this, we've asked a few authors to read brief excerpts from a few of the pieces that we have selected. There are more contributors with more entries that you can find via the link in the show notes. The following letter was published at the conclusion of the project. Dear friends, our correspondence project Letters Against Separation, hosted on e-flux Conversations, was launched as the COVID-19 pandemic forced most of the world to retreat into isolation. The aim was to have writers from different parts of the globe who were facing different phases and manifestations of the pandemic reflect on what was going on around them, in the hope of creating connections amidst the new conditions of separation. From places like Guangzhou and Tashkent, Mexico City, and Moscow, our writers have posed a series of open letters describing the acute anxieties and unexpected delights of self-isolation, the structural injustices revealed by the pandemic, and the slow, fraught return to something resembling normal life. We hope these letters have brought some measure of relief from your own extended confinement, or at least some distraction from the constant nagging of your dog wanting to play. As the project draws to a close, we wanted to highlight some of the especially moving and insightful contributions from these writers. We thank all the writers for their wisdom and courage during an uncertain time, and our readers for joining us in creating a community against separation. We will begin with writer Farkat Palvanzadeh in Tashkent, written August 17th, 2020.
All of these serious changes in my life are happening while I'm stuck in my room. And I have that feeling that it's almost impossible to reach that point where new life begins, like Achilles struggling to catch up with the turtle. There is also death appearing here and there in the background. And there were funerals in half of the 6 houses around my home during the last month. I do my best to focus on my work by saying to myself that death is a social construct. One can say that death is an abstract metaphor, but you cannot say the same thing about a child's birth. It is the most specific and serious thing that can happen. 1 week ago, my niece delivered a girl, one more member of our family. That means my parents have become a great-grandfather and a great-grandmother. In this system of kinship, I think I am called a grand-uncle, which sounds quite serious. This lockdown and the long period of staying at home have made me think about Western alienation and Eastern pragmatism. Maybe instead of getting stuck in the world of your own, you should make simple and natural steps out of it. Instead of focusing on death or an abstract new life, you can do something very obvious, like congratulating your parents, supporting your brave niece, and celebrating a real new life with them.
Next, we have a reading by curator and critic Nikita Yingxian Kai, reading a letter written on July 6th, 2020 in Guangzhou.
Dear readers of e-flux and friends from afar, my name is Nikita. I'm talking from Guangzhou, and I feel humbled to connect with you through my voice and letters. Half a year has gone by since the Wuhan lockdown started on January 23rd. So much has hit the headlines and quickly subsided as part of our daily norm. Yet more has emerged just to demonstrate how much we don't know what we don't know. I drafted my first letter against separation on May 2nd. In the subsequent writings, I have been trying to document the reflexive moments and voice out my personal reconciliation when the cosmopolitan information sphere of the outworld was confronted with local histories and conditions. These letters are also a string of thoughts resonating with an intimate circle of people and their bodies of experience and knowledge in coping with the disparate challenges. The recurring temporality, planetary scale, and racial political ripples of the pandemic have shuffled our epistemological ground, be it in Guangzhou, Beijing, Tashkent, Mexico City, Italy, London, Berlin, Seoul, Moscow, somewhere in rural Russia, or on an island. The physical separation prompts us to identify with each other's doubts and ambivalence beyond direct actions and manifestos.
And now, a reading by Irmgard Emmelheins, published on June 18th, 2020 from Mexico City. Irmgard Emmelheins is an independent translator, writer, researcher, and lecturer.
I made a bold declaration on Facebook that was highly liked and commented. I stated that we need to demand a rent and utilities payment freeze, along with mortgages and credits, to massively distribute food, to give a basic universal income for the coming 3 months so no one is forced to go out and work, to subsidize family businesses and pymes, which in Mexico stand for small and medium enterprises, to nationalize hospitals, to stop the Mayan train and other mega projects, that Amazon and food distributing chains donate part of their earnings to people in need, that measures be taken, like a functional and properly trained police force, to palliate or stop gender violence under quarantine, that Congress and chambers be suspended until it's safe for us to go out on the streets and protest at their doorsteps to make demands. Because car protests have been pathetic and subject of class shaming. The wide echo on social media of the statement, which is not really extraordinary, is what other countries are doing, was unsatisfactory to me, a sign of lack of vision and political will. I'm exhausted and sad. Racism, classism, vigorexia, pulsion to destroy, to self-destroy, like a burning life, their tongues, speaking, but black screen zombies, skinless living, sex no touching, parody specters, theater politics, reality burning drought, decentralization, the wounds on Roberta's withers, my neighbor's pettiness, tiny toxic micro shits.
Reading next will be Carol Yinghua Lu, a letter from June 7th, written in Beijing as a family with Liu Ding and their son Liu Qingshuo. Carol Yinghua Lu is a writer and curator, and Liu Ding is an artist.
In 1933, Chinese writer Lu Xun wrote in his short essay, Ode to the Night, the following words. People's words and deeds often appear different during the day and at night, under the sun and in front of the lights. The night is a mysterious heavenly cloth woven by nature, covering all people, making them warm, at ease, and unknowingly, gradually removing the artificial mask and clothes, and wrapping it in the boundless black-like big pieces. The night was over, and the people got up carefully and came out. It was the couple, just as they were before 5 or 6 o'clock. From then on, it was lively and noisy, but behind the high wall, in the middle of the building, in the deep boudoir, in the black prison, in the guest room, and in the secret office, there is still an amazingly real darkness. In the light of the day, the rush is the dark decoration, the gold cover on the jar of human meat sauce, and the cream on the ghost's face. Only night is honest. I love night and wrote Ode to the Night at night. What Lu Xun taught us in this powerful text, which is still relevant and especially so today, is that after opening our eyes, we should still have our eyes that can watch the night. When we talk about post-COVID-19, we should all train ourselves to watch the night. Let us do not just fixate on things that are changing quickly, but keep our eyes on things that need to be changed urgently for the better. Let's fight against separation.
Next is a letter from Kitty Chukrov in Moscow, published on May 1st, 2020. Kitty Chukrov is a thinker and writer who is an associate professor at the National Research University Higher School of Economics, Moscow.
One of the questions that the students asked during our Zoom meeting was why, during the pandemic, grieving is either postponed or ignored. Indeed, not only the ruling institutions but civil society itself has avoided commemorating the dead, even the medical workers whose deaths have been heroic. We have not witnessed a global epidemic of such scale before, but I will venture 2 reasons for this lack of collective mourning. First reason, grieving becomes possible only from a relatively secure position that places itself beyond the clinic. Those who remain within the clinic cannot allow themselves to mourn, as they are potential patients and continue to face the risk of death themselves. When an entire planet has turned into a clinic, life and death become the domain of quantification and statistics. Death is then treated as a lowered level of life indicators and not a threshold that could acquire the eventual significance to be mourned as an irretrievable loss. Second reason, outside the conditions of a global pandemic, roughly 150,000 people die daily on the planet. This death rate is usually not specified as a motivation for any national or global grieving. It is part of daily statistics. In many countries, the initial approach to the COVID-19 death rate among governmental institutions was to normalize it and add it to the annual death rate from various viruses and epidemics. It was initially looked upon as part of the overall healthcare statistics, rather than the sign of anything disastrous. Despite the exponential growth in the death rate and the quarantine measures, this approach continues by and large. We act as if we are dealing with an unfortunate temporary condition, rather than a devastating accidentality. This approach is also maintained because grieving, by emphasizing the scale of the devastation, could reveal the failures of the healthcare system and the collapse of social welfare.
And in our final excerpt, back to April 13th, 2020, this is dancer, choreographer, and writer Kasia Wolinska.
If there are any suggestions of directions in the now, we could perhaps take slowness for a teacher. And this extraordinary suspension, what may be of equal importance, is what we contract and what we release. There is undoing and relearning ahead of us, and it may not be pretty or pleasant. In the world watered with death, we should try to hold each other dear. One of my favorite dancing thinkers, Steve Paxton, noted that when bodily tensions are released, the imagination is celebrating. And since we can't touch each other now, let us imagine ourselves in those post-pandemic waltzes. Do you see yourself swaying and turning? Can you feel how the space turns? When learning how to do that, the balancing of oneself is a first step. Situating and breathing, slowly turning your head, noticing how your movement affects the space. Sometime soon, we will meet in the ballroom. Kasia Wolinska, 13th of April 2020, Berlin, Germany.